choice. Would you rather be stuck watching nothing but Hallmark movies for the rest of your life or horror movies for the rest of your life?
Well, I'm going to answer a question with a question. Are the Hallmark movies around a specific holiday?
I think all of them.
Specifically, all of the holidays, but specifically
Just
Christmas, because they do the Christmas movies the most.
Yeah, it's Christmas year-round on Hallmark anyway, so I would probably go for the Hallmark movies. Like,
You're not a horror movie guy?
I can watch them, but, growing up and seeing, like, It,
Yep.
clown down in the sewer drain, that's got a little bit of a rippling effect.
Oh, yeah, for me
I think
too.
For all of us. So I guess I would default to say, it's the Hallmark movies.
Yeah. I'm one of these, like, I love Hallmark movies. Like, my wife bought me the shirt. It says, this is my Hallmark movie shirt, and I have the sweatpants and, like, the whole nine. You about to say?
Well, I was going to say that I would actually rather watch the horror movies.
Yeah.
Because after you've seen one Hallmark movie, you've seen them all.
I feel the same way about horror movies.
Well,
how
not
many
really,
times can
because
the bad guy walk super slow and still catch the guy and kill him?
But here's the thing. What do you consider a horror movie? Because you might have like vampires on one side, and you might have like creepy, weird stuff, clowns on the other. So.
You know what I think is interesting is I've noticed a big pickup in the horror movies in the theaters now. And I was, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I listened to one where they were talking about the reason why that is it's that communal experience in the theater of like, no one wants to go see a comedy in a theater because not everybody laughs at the same jokes, but everyone jumps at the same jump scene.
Yeah.
Everybody likes that feeling of being scared together. You're not alone being scared in that.
Right.
And like, peeing a little at the same time as somebody next to you that may have just peed a little. It's like there's this communal experience. I never thought about that. And there's this huge resurgence of horror movies right now because of that, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah. Just to have, those experiences too, like when you think about it in the movie theater, I think probably one of the horror movies that like probably jumps at me the largest in a movie theater setting was the Blair Witch Project.
Yes.
Oh, I went and saw that on opening night in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm citing it. It was crazy. Yeah. Like we were all jumping out of our skin. Yeah. And just that whole entire flick just got us.
It's bad.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think that was filmed in Arkansas.
Was it really?
I want to say so. Like it's some weird trivia thing that I figured out one day. I was trying to look it up, but it will.
So I got a follow-up question for you though.
Okay, go ahead.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Bro, I've recently been asked this question a lot more often than not because I came out one time and I guess the haters came out once I said it wasn't. Yeah. And so I've been challenged. I've never seen it before. But I know it's filmed around Christmas time.
It
is. It's a Christmas party. That
I have to stick with my my stance originally that I've always said it's not. But are you going to come at me and tell me it is?
Well, it's on my Christmas movie list.
Yeah.
Right. And my follow-up statement too is that the only good thing that's ever come out of O'Hare Airport was the Die Hard movie series.
Right.
That's funny.
Because I've been caught in that airport one too many times, and I'm like, no. And I always go back. The only reason why I'm here is because Die Hard is in existence, and then it gets put on the Christmas movie list. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. I would say that it's only because it's because it's filmed during a Christmas party.
I get that.
But there's no cookies involved, no presents. Well, there are presents.
There are presents, but I think that the premise behind the film has nothing to do with Christmas. Yeah, It just happens during the Christmas.
No, I get that. I do. Dude, Chad, we're in the studio again. It's been a while.
I'm telling you.
Here. We got Gordon
and
here with us.
And we got one of our own in the house.
Yeah, like I get lost on it. We just chit-chatting and talking, but now we're here in the studio together. So we've taken a little bit of break. We've had some reruns going, but now we're back and we've got Gordon, like the man, the myth, the legend, Gordon in here. And so I'm pumped, dude.
Yeah,
you're
me
here.
Too. Me too. I
and
tell
so
you build that up very, very huge,
dude. Like the projects we've worked on together have gotten such huge response and like positive impact responses because Gordon, like you bring a passion and a flair and like an excitement for what you do. I don't know if that's like everything in life or you like truly do love Vertafore or all the above. Like,
well, it's interesting, when you start putting it that way, a lot of the passion that comes through, in this space that we play in, like the independent agent channel, I think really drives to, some of the core parts and pieces of me, right? Because I always want to see the IAs. I want to see them win, right?
Sure. It's
definitely a tough market out there, and I didn't plan to be in insurance, but my grandfather was a nationwide agent. My folks are in insurance. My in-laws are in insurance. My wife's in insurance, right? Yeah. And we all didn't plan it, right?
Yeah.
But to be over here and really trying to drive forth this part of the industry, supporting the independent agent channel is definitely a passion. It really is a passion.
Some of our biggest and best moments on the podcast with you, like that moment, you're like, we built Bind. Yes. And it was just like,
absolutely.
This incredibly exciting, like real moment, authentic moment for you. And it's like lived in infamy forever.
Yeah.
And I still have people comment on that one. Like, people come to me like, I listen to the show. My favorite part is when like Gordon's like, we built Bind. And it's like shouting from the rooftops.
It was.
And
that
you were so
moment.
genuinely excited.
Yeah. And that's really where I think a lot of my passion comes from around this, is that getting to be a part of that experience and helping the channel here, right? And really seeing the channel succeed. You always look at the things like with Bind, right? I mean, that wasn't me. There's a lot of other people just solely me. There's a lot of other people behind me and bringing this, even your parts that you played into it. As we come all together around this is so awesome to see that we have a part and a piece in rolling this out to a channel in the insurance industry that needs advocates like ourselves, right? I was just in a call earlier today with Augie, and we were talking about the three-legged stool, and I was like, yes, the three-legged stool, because that's truly what it is. That's how we are so successful, right? So that's, I think, where a lot of my passion comes from here is really to drive forward, this IA channel.
100%. And you and I have this background of, again, I'm the same way. My father-in-law was in it. My dad's in it. My brother's in it. My whole family. My wife's in it. Like the whole thing. But you and I both started off, like we've been in the carrier side, the agency side. We've worn different hats there. What influence or what role does that play in your decision-making now and the way you have that passion now? Do you reach back in the well and like, I have to, tap back into the underwriter days? Or tap back into agency days, tap back into these days, or is it just kind of just flows out of you? Or both?
I think it's a little bit of both here, because where I cut my teeth in insurance was rating Massachusetts commercial auto policies. And when I say rating, I'm talking like the rate order calculation, ground up. Yep, you got it. Yeah. But when you start at that point, and I thought it was meaningless at the time, it really gave the foundation to be able to go and solve some of these complex things that we are trying to solve within this channel here, right? And I kind of channel it all in here, and then a lot of it is just like where we are in the moment today on this journey. I love the word journey because it always insinuates that it's not really a start or an end, but it's how we're continuing to work through, in making this channel what it is today, right? So it's both. It's really what my prior life was, what it is today, and all the experiences throughout it.
Well, and it's funny, I talked to Heath back when we first, started talking to you about things, and I was like, Gordon, he's kind of a quiet guy, but then we find out, no, once he gets going, he gets going.
Yeah.
And he really puts some passion behind it. And
you really do. And I think that's somewhere like you and I both, sharing that passion and excitement for that. And not a lot of people get excited about insurance like we do. No. But I wonder, following up on that, as far as the experiences you have, one of the biggest challenges I feel like, even going back to my agency days and carrier days, is getting a quote, getting that, because it all starts there. Like we need a prospect in the door, you got to quote them. There's a reason they come to you. So when you came here and started working on some of these products, PL rating and working on commercial submissions, whatever it might be, was that something that like kind of gave you twitch, or was like excitement, like, oh, I get to solve this challenge?
So actually, for my carrier days, I had responsibility around the comparative raters, the download, agency integration, agency management. So it really positioned me really nicely to understand what agents are up against when they're trying to go get a quote, right? And really, when we start thinking about like getting a quote here, that's the first true interaction with a new customer, right? And when that customer walks in, I feel it's our obligation to our agent customers and partners here, that how do we help you in securing that new customer into the agency, right? Because getting the customer in, getting the quote done effectively and efficiently is that part where it's the true moment of truth, right? Yeah. Before claims, right? Because everyone talks claims as the moment of truth. It really starts up front, right? The expectation, how's the agency going to interact here with that customer? And I say, with the PL rating software, along with commercial submissions, is saying, how do I help in that initial moment of truth for the interaction with the agency and the customer to establish an expectation, right? And that's really where I see is like the overall, like, this is how we can grab the reins here and continue to drive this forward here with helping our agencies here. So
I want to say something too, just from the perspective of kind of the ground room floor here. Like, Gordon's the real deal. He's been through the ringer with all these different positions that he's been through, and he really wants to make agents' lives better.
Yeah.
And I think that to me, that's a necessary part of it. You got to go through the trenches. You got to start at the ground floor. You got to know some of those things that are the pain points from experience, not just from saying, well, this is our pain point.
Right.
You really do have to know, and I think that's important.
No, that's a really good call out, too, because I think a lot of us that don't plan on being in insurance, all of a sudden are like 19 years later, and I spent 19 years at a carrier before I took this role here at Vertafore, was like, holy cow, you have 19 years of experience and held several roles within the carrier space, supporting from rating to underwriting, agency integration, agency management, and all of those experiences come together and really help drive forward the products that I'm supporting here and really trying to make it easier for our agents to write new business, right? And the other part here too, and I was just talking to another coworker tonight about the workflow. Like, how can we start looking at this not just from like a quoting perspective, but an overall part of the agency's workflow, right? And how do we help them be effective and efficient here, right? Because that's how independent agents win, right? If they have to jump through multiple hoops to go get a quote from several different carriers and they're re-entering the same data set multiple times on carrier sites, that's ineffective for them, right? For these agents, they have to find ways to streamline that, right? I just so happen to have BL rating and commercial submissions that help does that, right? But there's other parts and pieces that can support that workflow to really help these agents be effective and efficient, right? Because I always go back and say organic new business growth is a key success factor, along with retention, but it is a key success factor in an agency. They've got to be finding ways to bring in that new business into the door.
And I think, one of the biggest soapboxes lately that I've stumbled into, and I didn't realize how passionate I was about it, was, this idea that people just think of money as the only currency instead of focusing on the time element.
Yeah.
And there's a whole thing, even me going back to my agency owner days, I missed this so much of like, oh, I wrote this business or whatever, and it didn't matter that it took us 3 weeks and I touched it 47 times. I lost money on that deal.
Right.
And so many agencies right now are still thinking that way of like, as long as I get done, it doesn't matter how many times. But no, the name of the game now should be, if it's not now, how can I do it with the least amount of clicks, the most efficient? And that's what you're here to do, and that's what we're here to do as a team. And the story that Chad tells, the story that I tell, the story you tell.
Yeah, 100%. We come at this and say, if we have a data set, a good data set, how do we get that into the system? How do we get it out to carriers to get that initial quote going, right? And do it in a manner where an agency is not having to do multiple clicks. And we ideally, we want them to make money on the risk. We don't want them to lose money on that, because typically commission rates, on a personal lines book of business is much smaller, right, than like a commercial lines type of business here. So they're already on the fine edge, right? So then how do we help them be effective and efficient in quoting that, but also how do we help them do more in less time, right?
100%.
And there's a lot of things out there that, we look at to say, how do we get data in, right? How do we get it quickly in, get rates, and and find the right home for this risk here, and I think those are where we have an opportunity within the independent agent channel to continue to go after, right, and help agents. I know we're talking about quoting here, but there's other aspects of this too, like from servicing perspective, right?
Yeah, so as we sit, like I know when this was going to come out, so I'll say it this way. 2 weeks ago, we saw a demo of commercial submissions from a live agent on a webinar that I hosted. If you want to watch it, go to their website, find that webinar. It was, a Solution Central webinar with Shyla Langford showing an actual quote going from a brand new quote, start to finish, and she got like 6 quotes and went through the whole thing and took her like 20 minutes. Yeah. Now, she's done it muscle memory 1,000 times, but to watch her go through, and she even had an error screen here and there, but she still was able to go from start to finish, get 6 different quotes,
right?
Knock this out in a matter of 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Which I can remember back in the day of like, oh, here goes a small bop. I'm going to spend 2 weeks on this sucker for a $1,500 premium.
Exactly.
For her to go through there and to be able to see the discrepancies, like. One carry was $8,000, one was $1,200, and one was $4,000.
Right.
And she was like, "These may not be the most accurate." And those people that come at us and like, "Oh, raters aren't the most accurate," you could see a pretty big discrepancy that's not going to be that far off.
Yeah.
And so she was like, "I was able to rule this one out and this one out. If I were doing this one live, this is what I would do."
Yep.
And just to see how quickly she was able to go through that and the amount of time she was able to save, she was like, "Otherwise, I'd have been spending 2 weeks trying to get a quote like this."
And that's a lot of the things too where we come at in building those workflows and finding opportunities within the workflow to help out, the agencies go after these pieces of business, right? A lot of the things like within commercial submissions, we stumbled around classification, right? Classifying, think of nature of business of the risk, right? And how we each look at what a business is doing from a different lens in understanding that. So what we built there with our industry classification was allowing this to say, hey, we can find key parts and pieces of this to help the agent get to the right answer faster, right?
100%.
And the agency not having to guess, but more along the lines of use their industry knowledge around their class codes and get them to that spot, right? And then distill that down into the lines of business that they want to quote. Those are the opportunities that I'm talking about that we can come at this and say, this is how we help you be more effective and efficient versus going back to the pencil and paper.
Right.
I was talking about, in a Accord form, how I would get them on my desk. Holy cow, every single box was checked. Now you had to understand what the agent was asking for, right? What is it? What we're going after here? And then did you classify it the same way that I was going to classify it, right? Understanding the exposure there. So those are the items that, I say it gets me going, really charged up here because I know there's opportunity for us in this channel to go and help us be more effective and efficient.
I'm just kind of curious on one of the things here with that is, what are some of the things that you're seeing that may be trending differently than what we maybe thought about now that Bind is out there, now that we have some of these moving parts, so to speak. Yeah. What are some things that maybe were unexpected or something that you guys are seeing as a trend that people are asking for?
Well, I think when you reference Bind there, a lot of the items that we had a really good grasp on like how we were going to do this. And we knew that Bind was a journey and that we knew we had a day one MVP. And we went after that part. We've been continuing to build out Bind over the last 12 months and really saying, what are agents running up against when they go into a carrier site to issue a piece of business, right? Coming out of a comparative rate or a rate call one, right? A lot of what happens is that there's a reconciliation process that occurs on the carrier's website based off of the data set that the agency originally started with to what the carrier might have found through third-party data source, contributory data sets, and we knew we wanted this, right? We didn't know exactly what it was when we rolled out Bind originally, but we knew we needed it. So over the last 12 months, we've built out this reconciliation process where it really allows the agents to say, hey, this is what you entered, this is what the carrier entered. What are we doing here, right? And when I say what are we doing here, whose data set are we grabbing? Or could it be parts and pieces, right? I think probably the number one on the homeowner side is the coverage A amount, right? The agent says it's X, the carrier says it's Y, and what's the truth, right? He said, she said, and then the actual truth, right? So those are the things that we are thinking through and going after in this workflow to help the agents out, right? And then along with the carriers and allowing them to be presented on the platform in a manner that makes sense to them, right?
One of the things that I found to be a surprise for me that I didn't expect when I got into as back in my agency days of being or having a rater was the help that it gave me with my carrier agent relationship because of the data that's there. And I would have, even as a carrier rep myself, I would go in and bang on the desk like, I need more submissions. I need more submissions. And like knowing that data is there in the rater of saying, I quoted you 500 times over the last 2 years and you only wrote 3 of them. Like there's something wrong here. Or for the carrier to come here and say, okay, something's going on here. I haven't seen any quotes in the last month. What's been going on?
Yeah.
Whether that's, well, you haven't been competitive. Like, how do you know you haven't quoted us? It's almost like an accountability thing to be like, wait a minute, you haven't really, or we have. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
That was fascinating for me.
It is, and those are where, speaking from experience here, we on my carrier side, we had a fall off of quotes, and we were trying to understand why and what happened. At some point in time, as a carrier, we got unselected, right? And once we identified that, we were able to go back to agencies and like, okay, we need to select you again, right? You need to select us on your radar there. But without having the data set and for the agents to look at it and say, well, look, one, pricing, this is where you are, competitiveness. And number two, are you really there? Allowed us to have that conversation and ask questions, right? So the quote data behind this is so important to agencies to understand, what their individual teams are doing and how are they on their close ratios. And then along from a carrier perspective to understand, hey, this is what's out in market from an appetite perspective. This is who's quoting me, and are there opportunities from a carrier agency relationship to go and start seeing if there's additional opportunity there where they can go after certain books of business, certain types of business and really having the quote data and being able to speak with the data and tying it back all together is truly an important thing.
I feel like this is kind of like and what I've always called, because I do video work and I do animation and motion graphics and things, and somebody will build a template, and I can go into that template and kind of pick it apart and go, oh, this is what they did here. This is what they did here. I can reverse engineer that and see all of the little points and pieces and parts and things, and I'm like, well, I never thought about doing it that way.
Right.
That's kind of what I'm seeing here with this is like it's kind of a reverse engineering process where you can kind of go back and look at and say, what did you guys do here that we didn't catch the first time?
Yeah, that's definitely a really good call out too. When you look at the quote flows here, and actually, I say quoting, but it's really the overall agency's workflow, right? What are their processes and procedures as they bring in a new customer into the agency? At the end of the day here, while the agents are out there looking to write new business, they also have to make sure that they're protecting themselves from an E&O exposure, right? So those policies and procedures in place and the processes that they have to follow. And then I look at from a quoting perspective, like how do I fit, PL rating or commercial submissions into their overall workflow so that it aligns to their business model, right? And it's not where it's creates a lot of friction there or abrasiveness. It's more of just saying, hey, it's here. Right. And then we're able to consume data into that workflow and then ultimately, allow the agents to go and quote the business. Right.
Right.
So
that's awesome. So, as you talk through this, you brought up a good part about the carrier side. Just as we wrap up, I would love for you to, because it's easy for us to talk about it from an agent standpoint, but if you wanted to talk to the carriers that are listening, because we're trying to expand our audience into the carrier space, and we're getting a lot of carriers listening now. What would you say to carriers that are on the fence about being a part of it or, expanding their reach using a comparative rater?
I think it's one of those things where, the first thing is always to start and have a conversation, right? With us. So please reach out. We're always happy to jump on calls and discuss what opportunities align there with the carriers. I think the other thing too to remember here is, one of the things that we call out around ease of doing business, right? You always want to meet your customers where they want to be met. And then ultimately, how do you get there, right? We know within the independent agent channel, in the quoting process there, the comparative raters are there, right? So from a carrier perspective, the question is do you want to meet your agencies there? or are you looking to make them come in single entry into your quoting workflow, right? And each carrier defines what ease of doing business is for them individually, and it's not just like one thing. It's usually made up of several parts and pieces of it that only those carriers can identify through their overall strategy and their business model. But ultimately, it comes back to saying, well, where do you want to meet your customers?
Well, and it's funny you say that, because there's some of these carriers that have come out with this. I think it's like you can get a quote with a phone number and a name. And I won't say the name of the carrier, but like these 2-question type things. And for a while, they're like, we don't need a rater because you just have to put in this or that. But now they're starting to even jump into the raters because it's like we're missing a large opportunity by not being there.
And they are. And it really goes back to
and what I won't say the names, but yeah.
It really goes back to what is ease of doing business, right?
100%.
And then finding, right. And then finding that spot where the agencies want to be met, right? And I think we all experience that too. We talk about the Amazon model, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Where do we want to be met, right?
Yeah.
We want it on our device, very easy to pick up, right? We're there, the products are there, you're selecting, you're buying, and they're shipping, right? Same concept here when we start talking about agencies and quoting, where do you want to meet your customers, right?
100%. Dude, thank you so much for hanging out with us for just a little bit. And shedding some light a little bit on that, and talking to our carrier friends too, because I think there's a big
there is
they should be, and if they haven't joined on our bind platform, they should be. They should be binding with us, because it's, again, you're leaving money on the table. I feel like if you're not, but again, I'm probably out of space saying that. You should probably talk to him about that, but that's just me. But again, thank you for being here and hanging out with us. Thank you, OMC. And guys that are listening, ladies that are listening, thank you so much for being here, being a part of our family. We love you. We appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe and like and listen and engage with us. And we will see you on the next one.